We're out here. This is the field where the magic happens.
Benning Bites with Damon Benning. Benning Bites with Damon Benning.
Another episode of Benning Bites. Appreciate you being a part of what we're doing here. Ravi, myself, Shane, over there on the wheels of steel, making sure that we can function as a show. Really, really good conversations this week, and well, in my opinion, but of course I'm a little biased. I just appreciate you being a part of what we do. However you get us, ESPN 590, the Tri-Cities. You can go Google, Apple, Spotify. I'm missing one. You can go regular old X. I don't know. Facebook. I got that one down. But we were just talking with Brunsey today, and so often with these Benning Bites, which is why I like when you guys kind of let me know what it is that you want us to hit on. Because the whole premise of Benning Bites was, gosh, what would you ask me if you only had a handful of minutes, at a grocery store, at the gas station? What are some things that we're talking about? And I think for this group, it was, comparing. It started with this question of, recruiting is always fluid. Things can change. And Ravi asked me the question. He said, who would I feel the most comfortable about of the three latest recruits that have made news, right? Tapu decommitting from Oregon State, Latif reaffirming that he's solid, and Dawson Merritt, who chose Alabama. And it was just a funny conversation in terms of how it made me feel, because I felt the most comfortable about Tapu maybe being a Husker late than I did Latif, and neither one has done anything to deter me. Right, it's just I answered this real time on the show. I said I know more about Coach Raiola and his personality and his success rate than I do about the mindset of quarterbacks going forward with the potential quarterback room that Nebraska has now. Sometimes if you assume that a guy's going to be a 2 or 3 year starter, it can be a little bit of a deterrent. So it wasn't anything that Latif said or didn't say. It was just, I was just going by trying to limit as many variables. But it got me thinking when we were talking to Bruns. And, he said sometimes with quarterbacks in recruiting, there's this little bit of and I used to always call it the Tommy Frazier factor, because I remember it a handful of years. We brought in Ben Roots, highly touted, T-Fraze, and we were pretty stockpiled at quarterback. Mike Grant was a redshirt senior, and we had some numbers. Then there were a couple years where it was like, gosh, it's hard to get big-time quarterbacks as people don't want to play behind Tommy Frazier. So, I'm just familiar with kind of how that impact is. And short of being a handful of schools that you stockpile 5-star quarterbacks and just wait for one to hit the portal, which is what some schools are afforded the luxury to do, then there has to be kind of an art or a science or strategic plan to recruiting quarterbacks. And I said, what's funny? Just in looking at Nebraska's roster, and I was kind of doing this off the fly, or off the top of my head. So I said, it's interesting. I think I remember counting 17 or 18 offensive linemen that are either sophomores, redshirt freshmen, or freshmen. But because 5 of those guys play at a time, we never say in the recruiting world, oh, man, guys don't want to come and sit and wait behind those guys. But it can, and I don't know if it's like that with this latest run on other offensive linemen choosing other schools. But when you're shooting for the moon, that thing's a long ways away. Sometimes you're going to miss, right? Whether it's a Scholl just to make up ground when Auburn was clearly in the hunt, or to get Sanders on campus, or even the trio from Bishop Gorman, like you're playing a little bit of catch-up. But then when I look at it, I'm like, okay, you still have a plan. A lot of guys still out there, whether it's Goodman or Hembrick or any of these guys. We never really talk about the depth that Nebraska's accruing along the offensive line. I mean, Donnie's just doing work along with that support staff, because we forget how awkward that spring game was a year ago, but the burning desire to still make it look like football, even though we were rolling out 6 or 7 capable offensive linemen. I mean, we went through a laundry list today of guys, whether it's, Corcoran or Mazuka or Latovsky or Hood, or, Benhart and Sledge and Gatula and Teddy Prohaska. And I mean, we're just rattling off linemen, and it was just, I'm sure I missed just 3 or 4 right there. But just what a difference a year makes, how quietly they restockpiled, speaking of pile, and did it in a hurry. So I get that the recruiting world can kind of be reactionary and, oh, hey, it's a little doom and gloom, the sky is falling. But I always think, like most things, context and perspective is important. I don't know what Tapu's going to do after decommitting from Oregon State, but I do know one thing that I feel pretty good about. And it doesn't happen with men a lot while they're alive, but, man, if they pull this one off and Tapu ends up coming back to Nebraska, send Donnie Raiola his flowers, because that guy's pretty good at what he does. It's another episode of Benning Bites.